year was 1999. I'm Aaron Thomas, here with Jeff Hans again. Thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of Collab Digital's podcast, The Year Was. Jeff, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Thanks for joining us here once again. 1999. This is our second go-around with this episode. We'll be honest with everyone at home. With a couple mistakes. We wanted to give you the best product possible, so we're re-recording it because we know we can do better.
Well, the thing is, we're doing all of this from memory. And we're researching, and I'm putting air quotes into the research part.
Researching in between watching movies and in between doing actual work, because we do have real jobs.
Yeah.
Well, right into it. We started our first episode, 2008, with the rundown, and we're going to start our second episode with that as well. For those of you at home who didn't listen to our first episode, the rundown is IMDb's top 20 movies at the box office. So, top 20 movies at the box office for 1999. Jeff, do you have a guess on what number 1 is? I think it's pretty obvious.
I can't remember, but I want to say Matrix.
Close. That is in the top 5. We're going to get right into it. Number 1 at the box office that year for 1999, Star Wars Phantom Menace.
Yep.
$474 million.
Because that was like, what, between 13, 15 years or something like that since anyone had seen a Star Wars movie, and everyone was like camping outside of the theaters, and everyone was taking their kids and...
Yeah, 16 years exactly in between Star Wars movies. So the last one before that was Return of the Jedi. And yeah, you're right. People were camping out in front of theaters, and there's notorious stories of people saying, yeah, I saw it, I hated it, I saw it 6 more times after that.
I think people were clamoring for like an Ewok revenge. Like, and they were like, you can't leave it off with Ewoks.
And it just, I mean, it's really difficult to think about it now. I mean, it's 2020, and we're looking at it through that telescope, and we kind of live in the age of Disney where we have a Marvel movie every year and a Star Wars movie pretty much every year as well. And 16 years, a long time for these people to wait.
What, episode 7, you're basically doing almost the same thing where there's a long period of time between the movies. People love the franchise. They're interested to see where it's going. You've got a new person at the helm, and you were just like, where do we go from here? Plus, you got to think all the cartoons that were out.
Yeah, it's true.
That were building up hype. So, like, a lot of kids were into it just based off of the cartoons and stuff.
You know, it's interesting. I'm thinking about it now is what was the marketing campaign like for... I mean, obviously, you don't have to do that much marketing for a movie. It's like, hey, Star Wars is coming back. Wow, it just sold out, just off that announcement. But what were the... Do you remember what the trailers were like?
I don't remember the trailers. I don't ever remember really wanting to go. I had seen the VHSs. My uncle had the VHSs of them, and I enjoyed it, and I played with some of the toys and stuff like that, but I don't ever remember being like, Dad, I definitely want to go to this. But my dad took me, and I was into it, but I don't think I saw the other 2 in theaters, to be completely honest.
Wow, yeah, no, I do remember seeing that at the theaters. May have been one of the first movies I saw at the theaters. I saw all of those prequels at the Senator, which is, for those of you at home who are not from Baltimore, from Maryland, the Senator's a legendary theater here. All right, so that was number 1 at the box office in 1999. Star Wars episode 1, Phantom Menace, $474 million at the box office. And number 2, pretty big drop off, The Sixth Sense, $293 million.
Yeah, I can see that. That was a hype movie. That was one of the movies that was really big with the don't spoil it, don't tell anybody what happens, and you'll be delightfully surprised at what is going on. Also, one of those movies that you watch if you watched it in theaters and then you go home and watch it again once it comes out on VHS or DVD or whatever, you watch it and you're like, yeah, I get this now.
Yeah, it's a fun rewatch. I mean, some of those M. Night Shyamalan movies don't really hold up well. Like the first time you see it, it's entertaining, but that one is great rewatch value. And yeah, $293 million at the box office. And I think what you said there really kind of encapsulates that movie is the spoiler part, because this and another movie we're going to talk about later kind of started that whole spoiler watch where it was like, you got to go see this movie. I can't tell you why, but trust me, go see this movie. It's awesome. Number 3 at the box office, Toy Story 2, $245 million. That is, that's big bucks there. That's a summer box office.
I'm wondering if that was the is that the second ever Pixar movie, like total, or is there something that was in between there? I can't even remember.
I would be really shocked if they had Toy Story and then waited all that time to do another Pixar movie. So there was probably something in between that. Let's look it up here now.
List of Pixar films. Let's see what you got. Toy Story, then A Bug's Life, then Toy Story 2. So it's only the third film that came out of Pixar.
How many? What was so Toy Story?
Toy Story is 95,
and then Bug's Life was
98.
Okay,
and Toy Story 2 was 99.
So wow, that's like Murderer's Row right out of the bat. Like those are three of the best animated movies. And then you've
got Monsters Inc. was 2001, Finding Nemo 2003, Incredibles 2004. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can't go wrong with Pixar.
Yeah, no. Any baseball player would be happy to have that as their batting average because that's that's batting 1,000 and some. Toy Story. It's funny too because I still haven't seen Toy Story 4, but it just Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. The second one is my least favorite.
I can't bring myself to even watch 3 because I heard that it's so devastating.
Oh yeah,
and I haven't watched it yet. Don't spoil it for me.
I won't spoil it, but I will tell you a story that when Toy Story 3 came out, my dad was dating what is now his wife, my stepmom, and we were going to the movies, and the whole time we're driving there, we're talking about Toy Story 3. And I think my dad thought we were joking, and then we got there, and we actually saw Toy Story 3, and he's like, we're going to effing see Toy Story 3? And then we're sitting there, and of course, myself and my stepmom, we're crying, and he looks over, and he's like, you guys are really fucking crying during Toy Story 3? This is ridiculous. It's a great movie, though. Number 4 at the box office that year, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. That's the second of the Austin Powers movies, for those of you at home. International Man of Mysteries, the first. $206 million at the box office.
The introduction of one of the greatest characters of all time, Fat Bastard.
Oh, is he? That it is in the second one.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the beginning of Fat Bastard.
And
so funny.
And one of the funniest bits that they did happens in the very beginning of this film, because the whole first film is about Elizabeth Hurley and like that journey of him winning her over and all of that, and become like pretty much it's his wife or whatever now. The very beginning of the film starts where she's a robot. And it's an assassin that is going to kill him, and he has to kill her. And they just completely wipe the slate clean so that he can have another love interest immediately.
He's like, hey, well, we got to do things new. We got to do things brand new. I think it's so cool just to see Austin Powers in the top 5. It's like you look, once again, this is 2020. It is crazy to think that Mike Myers would be in a top 5 movie at the box office, but he was such a huge star at that point.
Think about all the... As dumb as this sounds, the kids that had costumes for Halloween dressing up as Austin Powers, that was a huge thing.
And then the years before that, I mean, 2-3 years before that, you had every dude and his buddy were dressed as I almost said Bill and Ted, but Garth and Wayne. It was like he was coming off Wayne's World. Yeah, it's SNL had a great run where it's like all those guys were on the show, and then they spun off. Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, David Spade, who all had just tremendous careers in film afterwards, too. But number 4, Austin Powers 2, Spy Who Shagged Me, $206 million at the box office. Here is your choice for number 1. Actually, at number 5, The Matrix, $171.98 million.
I'm interested to see. I think this came out in the spring, but I could be mistaken. But I remember it being a big, if I remember correctly, being a big summer blockbuster action-y film.
If they didn't release this during the summer, that would be a sign that they just didn't know what they had on their hands, because this is a summer blockbuster. I can't imagine that it wasn't released.
March 31st. Wow.
Well, that is, I mean, the big times for movies is that March area, because you remember we're just coming off Endgame came out in that area at that time as well. Obviously, a long time afterwards, but Endgame was a March, February release. So that time, obviously Christmas, and then you have your summer blockbusters. Those are your 3 biggest release times for movies.
It feels like it would be this is like how you just sell it as the action, and it's like a popcorn flick, and you go and you watch it.
No,
it's like a summer film, but March, that's surprising.
If this comes out now, The Rock's in that shit.
You know what? Probably has to do with is the sci-fi angle. I don't think that they could sell people on the weird sci-fi aspect of it. So they were kind of like, let's market it for like an early spring release.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, there is, there is some, elements of political statements in that movie and stuff like that as well.
Oh,
and
the religious aspects to it and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, there's anyone on YouTube will give you a good deep dive as to what all things went on with this film.
Yeah, but The Matrix, not just one of the best not just one of the best movies from 1999, one of the best movies made, period.
Oh,
one of the
super influential as far as the things that they did as all the technology, the camera arrays that go around them to do the slow-mo camera footage, the bullet time, there's just so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna table some stuff that I want to say about The Matrix, because I know we're gonna be talking about that a lot moving forward as we get into our other categories. Running through the rundown here, number 6, Tarzan, 171 million at the box office. So that is the second Disney movie in the top 10.
Yeah.
Tarzan.
I mean, not really too much to say about that one. It was okay. I don't think that there's anything that came out of it as far as like cultural phenomenon, but I think that it was maybe one of those things that was kind of overdone.
No, Tarzan, the thing that stands out to me the most about that movie, awesome soundtrack. Phil Collins totally killed that. And then the video game, it's just there was at that I was that age where the video game tie-ins for the movie that was a big deal for me.
Video games at everything.
Yeah.
Any movie that came out that was even remotely geared towards kids. Christ, I remember when Die Hard came out in '88. They had an NES game for Die Hard. Like, what? Why are you gearing that towards children?
They that game's actually really hard. I have it for the
terrible.
PlayStation 1.
Once you get to the rooftop. With the helicopter,
it's impossible.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah, that those video game tie-in games at that time, they were such a big deal for me. Tarzan and Toy Story 2 both had video game tie-ins that I loved. Number 7, the number 7 movie at the box office that year, another big surprise when you look back on it through 2020 eyes. 163 million at the box office. Number 7, Big Daddy.
Oh, I love Big Daddy.
No, it's my favorite. That's another one of those. I'm gonna put it on the shelf right now because I know as we get into our other categories.
We'll yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll be talking about Big Daddy a lot because that holds a special place in my heart. Number 8, 155 million. Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, the first one.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
that was another summer release, maybe.
Probably. That sounds like a summer blockbuster. I think the real question with these mummy movies, Brendan Fraser mummy movies, is which one's your favorite? You like the first one or the second one? You throw the third one out. That's terrible.
The first one. I'm gonna say the first one. The second one was good. Like you're talking about this when the kid, they got the kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I just like the kid.
Felt like more like a Indiana Jones adventure because they were kind of like chasing him down and he was leaving the clues. And that was cool.
I just like the aspect with the kid. Number 9 at the box. Actually, but June.
No, that's this is the other Mummy. I think they said it was in May. Hold on a second. Yeah, May 4th. So around
that time. All right, number 9 at the box office, 152 million, Runaway Bride. I just think it's funny because this is essentially based on a true story because she left her real husband at the altar as well.
So Runaway Bride was part of I live right by Benji's Drive-In Theater, which is the largest outdoor screen on the East Coast. If you aren't from Maryland and you don't know Benji's Drive-In,
huge.
It's a big deal. And I'm lucky because I'm like 2 miles away from it, so I can just drive there anytime in the summer and go see like 3 movies for like $15 or something.
I was gonna say you could walk, but that actually defeats you. You can't do that.
I don't think you're allowed in.
No, you can't do that.
But they when that movie came out, my dad's cousin came up from South Carolina. He didn't come up for the movie. I'm not saying that. He came up.
Not a diehard Julia Roberts fan.
Yeah, he's not like Richard Gere's my dude. But like he comes up, and one of the things that he does when he visits is like we all go to the drive-in movie theater. So me, my dad's cousin, my dad, and I think my brother went with us too. Go to the drive-in movie theaters. It didn't matter what was playing, but I think it was that South Park and some other movie. I can't remember the third movie, but it was a triple feature. But seeing that at like 11, I'm a little boy. I don't care.
Yeah.
Who cares about this rom-com crap?
You're like, hey, that Julia Roberts lady is really pretty. Number 10, here's another one I was talking to, that other movie I was talking about that kind of started that. Hey, spoiler alert. Number 10, Blair Witch Project, 140 million at the box office.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to go to a Q&A to find out, like, the people that actually experienced this, the ones that made the film, and like the stories that they told about how it was made, and it made on a shoestring budget. I think it was like 60 grand they spent on it. And how much did they make?
All profit. 140 million.
Yeah.
That's all profit. Hopefully they reinvested that.
So I think one of them's like a teacher, and yeah, they've all moved on, obviously, but just the stories about like how it was marketed, people thought this was real. And when it was finally released, because they couldn't tell anybody what was going on with it, when it was finally released, they all got like phone calls from their family members saying, "Are you okay?" Like they thought they were dead. They thought their friends and family were dead because of the movie.
And this is, I mean, just there's somebody young is going to be listening to this and is going to be like, "That's crazy." Well, you understand, this is pre-Twitter, you know? This is just...
You couldn't research it. Yeah. It was word of mouth, and these were ghost stories that were being told around Maryland that people believed, like hardcore believed in.
Yeah, no, it was such a huge deal, that movie was, when it came out. It's kind of, I was a little surprised just to see it at number 10. I thought that was one of those movies
Horror doesn't really... It's a low risk. So when you put 60,000 into a movie, you're expecting less than $1 million return, if that. And then when you get something like a top 10 movie for the year,
that's a great point, because you think if that comes out now, probably on Netflix. Not a bad thing, but it probably does not get a theatrical release.
Right.
Number 11 at the box office, 140 million. Stuart Little.
Nah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
like half animated, half not. It's cute.
It's a nice little movie. I always feel bad for those kids who didn't get adopted because that fucking cute mouse was there.
They chose the mouse.
Those poor kids. Number 12, another meh movie, and I don't mean this in any disrespect. It's really long, so once you see it once, it's kind of a one and done. $136 million at the box office, The Green Mile.
See, people will argue with you on that. I haven't seen it, but I know that it's an impactful movie. It's a great drama story. I can't really judge it because I haven't seen it. So
this is a surprising one, because when we get into some of the other categories, we're going to talk about this a lot, and we're going to talk about it glowingly. I just would have figured it would have been higher up on the list. Number 13 at the box office, 130 million, American Beauty.
Oh, yeah. I think just the subject matter was probably what dipped that down, and people didn't want to rewatch it. I know if I see it, I don't want to see it again for another couple months, because it's one of those devastating movies.
Yeah, and it's funny because you usually get with movies like that, you usually just get one valley where it's like, all right, we're down, we'll go back up a little bit, we'll come back down a little bit, but this one's just up, down, up, down, up. I mean, it's just such a great, I think you said this off air one time, it's when we were talking about it, it's like, that's one of those movies you could just release the script. You don't even need the movie.
Yeah.
Just the script itself could be a book, and it'd be highly
entertaining. You can just read the words
on
the page, and that's good enough.
Yeah, it's a great one. Number 14. It's a movie I've never heard of. 126 million at the box office. The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, that's a Bond film.
Okay,
and that was towards the end of the Pierce Brosnan ones. I can't remember. I think there was GoldenEye, then there was something, and then there was that one. And you were talking about the video game tie-ins. So GoldenEye was like the first of the first-person shooters, and GoldenEye on Nintendo 64 was like, it set the bar for shooters. And anything that you enjoy now as far as like Call of Duty is probably because of GoldenEye.
No, it created a genre, and everyone who had an N64 at that time had that game.
Yep. Everybody remembers paintball mode. No, I'm kidding. But the video game tie-ins, they did the game tie-in with that movie as well, and it was garbage. But I think that was like, they were kind of like doing this thing where they were almost gearing the movie towards selling stuff and maybe selling the game, and it was more like ridiculous. I mean, Bond films are always ridiculous action, but I feel like the Pierce Brosnan ones were like a little bit more ridiculous and more gadgety than like Daniel Craig stuff is a little bit darker and more like fisticuffs.
Yeah, when you talk to a Bond hardcore Bond fan, they usually they don't gloss over the Brosnan stuff, but it's like usually they're talking about Connery or they're talking about Craig. Like Brosnan's kind of like
they
the
felt like
forgotten Bond.
he was like the effeminate man. Everyone else was like the man's man.
Number 15 at the box office that year, 116 million. Double Jeopardy. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is a Tommy Lee Jones movie.
It's Tommy Lee Jones and I believe Ashley Judd. And if you haven't seen it,
no, I haven't seen it.
It is a really tense movie, and it's based off of the statute that you can't be tried for a crime twice.
Yeah, they call that double jeopardy.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
The way that the whole movie gets set up is that her husband dies and she goes away for his murder. It looks like everything points to she murdered him. And she goes to prison, gets out. Tommy Lee Jones is the parole officer. And then she finds out that her husband's alive. So it gets super interesting from there.
I'll check that out. Number 16 at the box office, 116 million. Notting Hill. That's not one I'm familiar with.
I want to say, what the heck is his name? The unintrusive British man.
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant.
You knew it. You could have said unintrusive British man with a bad haircut. There you go.
It was a Hugh Grant movie. Good romantic movie, I guess. I don't think I saw that one.
Somebody out there is talking about it. They probably love it. Number 17.
Hugh Grant. How dare you? He's a national treasure.
I think we'll find a little less people clamoring about this movie. Wild Wild West, 113 million at the box office.
I love Wild Wild West, but thank you, Will Smith, for choosing this over The Matrix, because if you would have been Neo, I don't know that we would have the movies that we have now.
No, yeah, that's a legendary story for everyone out there who's never heard it. The Wachowskis went to Will Smith. They wanted him as Neo, and he turned that down to do Wild Wild West. And hey, look, that robotic spider's cool. 107 million at the box office. Number 18. Analyze This. I love this movie.
See, that's one that I also haven't seen. I didn't when I was younger. I wasn't into the whole like gangster genre in general, so it was never something that like drew my attention.
That's so interesting. I guess that's really just depends on what you're introduced to. One of the first movies my dad introduced me to, where he was like, "Sit down and watch this. It's awesome," is Goodfellas. So because of that, I was obsessed with the gangster genre.
I didn't really have that. I had the Bond films, so that's why I've seen like every single Bond film, because my dad was obsessed with all the Bond films. What you're introduced to as a kid, it's so funny how it helps shape you and your interests moving forward. Number 19 at the box office, 102 million.
The General's Daughter. I've never seen this.
I have not seen it either.
Number 20, 102 million as well at the box office. You know, it's kind of silly to think about. Like, it's kind of crazy to think that this is only number 20, because it kind of became a cultural phenomenon and spun off, multiple sequels. American Pie.
Oh, dear Lord. And it set the bar for, like, raunchy comedies. And anytime somebody says this one time, you finish it with at band camp.
Yeah.
Like it just became.
You have to be from that era, but yeah, if you grew up in that era, everyone knows.
Poor Jason Biggs, because like he went on to do other things, but he was always the guy that fucked the pie.
Yep. Yep. That's actually one of my favorite bits they do on
Jay and Silent Bob.
He's like, "It's always with the pie." Oh yeah, no, it's that. I loved that movie too when I was a kid. I mean,
it was dirty.
Yeah, no, for a certain generation, that was like there was boobs in it.
There's boobs there. And what's hilarious is Blink-182 had their cameo in there, and they in the credits. I don't know if you know this. In the credits, they credit each of them as being in the film. But the drummer, they don't credit Travis Barker, who was in the band at the time. They credit the old drummer, the drummer that was pre-Travis Barker, in the credits for that movie, if you look it up.
I wonder if that's like his big cash grab. He's like, "Hey, look, at least I'm still getting paid off American Pie."
He was like, "I was in American Pie." No, you weren't.
I didn't get to be a part of any of those albums.
I'm credited. It's right there, bruh.
Wow. So yeah, I mean the top 20. That's the rundown for 1999. Number 20, American Pie. Number 1, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. So. We're going from 474 million to 102.
A Star Wars kids film to a raunchy comedy with boobs and pie fucking.
Yeah, the Star Wars movie that really was like a toy grab because we could talk about Jar Jar for hours and no one wants to listen to that. All right, we're going to get into the heavy hitting categories here. I like to look at these as like our sports categories. We got an MVP, Rookie of the Year, Director of the Year, Coach of the Year if you want to. MVP. This one was a really, really tough one. I had 3 listed here because I think you can go with either one. I think 2 really stand out more than the other. But one, Denzel Washington, he had The Bone Collector and Hurricane this year. He was nominated for Hurricane. Tom Cruise, he had Magnolia and Eyes Wide Shut this year. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in Magnolia. And then you have Kevin Spacey with American Beauty, and he won the Academy Award in that movie. I think you can go with either one of those guys. All 3 of those were iconic performances by iconic actors, and
I mean, heavy hitters, all heavy hitters in their own right. Denzel for me has he's consistent with what he does, and he's always chosen dramatic roles. I don't think I've ever seen him in a comedy. Right? He's never done anything comedic.
No, I don't think so.
But he's consistent where he's in his wheelhouse. He's comfortable where he is. And I don't think I've seen either of those movies, but based on his career around that, to have 2 movies come out in the same year that feature him, it's pretty astonishing.
Yeah, he's one of those just guys, you say his name, and it's funny because it depends on who you're talking to. It's not like there's a lot of actors where you say their name and you just automatically know.
He's
like,
a one-name person. You can be like Denzel.
Oh, absolutely.
People are like Denzel, yeah.
But what I mean is, like, when you say Johnny Depp, most people are probably going to go to Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not his best movie, but that's he's Jack Sparrow for so many people. Denzel's,
especially our demo, like our age demo.
Yeah,
I would say, yeah,
absolutely, and then probably people a little younger as well. But with Denzel, it really depends on who you're talking to. You can say Denzel Washington. People may think
there's just so a wide array of things that, like, the other night I was just scrolling through movies that I have, and one that stood out was Fences. Like, it's a recent movie, but Fences is just such a devastating movie, and it's just people talking. Like, there's no movement, and it was based off of a stage play that he did. And going from the stage to the screen, I don't know what the transition was like, but it was amazing.
It's not just based on so him and Viola Davis are in that movie, and they did the movie. They also did the screenplay before it was a screen. They also did the play before that. James Earl Jones played that character and won a Tony for it. Yeah. So I mean, and James Earl Jones is not just one of the most respected African American actors. He's one of the most respected actors in general. Right. So for Denzel to take that part on, I'm sure he was like, I got to hit it out of the park. Yeah. You know, like, oh God, I love that movie. So we'll talk about that one day.
I ended up not picking any of those people. I ended up actually picking Jim Carrey, Man on the Moon. It's just for the sheer, like, the documentaries and stories. If you haven't seen it, I think there's something on Netflix that you can watch about that time.
Andy and Jim, or Jim and Andy, or something like that.
And it's just, he became Andy Kaufman, and I think it was out of a tremendous respect that him and other comedians have for Andy Kaufman, because he was a showman. He wasn't a comedian. He was a one-man show that nobody could match, and nobody understood where it was coming from and who he was.
Yeah, and you know, it's another one. We talked about Mike Myers, we talked about Adam Sandler, and you know, Jim Carrey's another. He's maybe in a different category than those guys, because now he's just like looked at as like some weirdo guy. But in the hands of a lesser actor, that role would have just fell flat, and that movie would have completely failed. But like Jim Carrey, he was so perfect for that role. I can't imagine the amount of pressure he put on himself to kill that, because I would assume that Andy Kaufman was probably a big hero for him.
Out of respect, I think he felt that he needed to be him in order to accomplish any proper portrayal.
It's one of those movies. It's you don't forget the first time you saw it, and a tremendous supporting actor role in that movie for Paul Giamatti, who is like the supporting actor. You know, like he's like, we need a guy who's good to be the best friend. we got Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
The honorable mentions for MVP, I have Russell Crowe. He had a pretty good year. He had The Insider, which was a big box office hit that year, or a big box office movie. Mystery Alaska is another fun movie that he was in. Julianne Moore deserves mention here just because she had 5 films that came out that year.
Crap.
I think it got to be scheduling, of course, but 5 movies. The End of the Affair. She also had Cookies, Fortune, An Ideal Husband, A Map of the World, and Magnolia. And I believe she was nominated for at least one of those. I think Magnolia. Yeah. Hilary Swank had a pretty solid year as well. She had Boys Don't Cry. She was nominated for that. That is one of her more legendary performances.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to Rookie of the Year. This one is a really tough one for me because it was a solid year for directors. Sam Mendes, American Beauty, and Spike Jonze being John Malkovich. Both of those were performances that put them on the map and established them as big-time players moving forward. Sam Mendes is in the news a lot right now because he directed 1917, which is a big movie that's coming out, and Spike Jonze, he's just been consistently knocking stuff out of the park for a while.
And consistently semi-controversial.
Yeah, no, he definitely is. And he's just got, I mean, Spike Jonze is one of those guys, you bring up his IMDb page, and he's like, well, he's not afraid to take chances, and he's not afraid to do, stuff that is different. Being John Malkovich, one of those ones that really stands out. It's a weird movie.
And that's another one that kind of was a cult classic after the fact. It's one of those that people have revisited and kind of it gets talked about in film schools and stuff. That's
going to be a theme here for this year. There's a couple other movies like that as well. Did you have a Rookie of the Year?
I had Rookie being Haley Joel Osment. Just the performance that he brought to a kid that can see dead people.
Oh my God, he's 8 years old in that movie or something like that, and he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
And before that, he had been in a bunch of TV sitcoms and stuff like that, little stuff, and then he just comes in for this, and obviously they saw something in him when they were casting the movie.
And you got to be a natural performer to be a kid and be that good in that movie because Bruce Willis was such a mega star at that time. Like a lot of people probably gonna have that nervousness of just walking onto the set with Bruce Willis, but like he's like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. He really kills that role, and in that role in the hands of a lesser actor changes the whole movie.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because
working with children is extremely difficult in general. But if you've got somebody like the way that he portrayed the character, you've got somebody that knows how to handle themselves as an actor. He is an actor.
Bruce Willis needs to have somebody to bounce off in them. He cannot carry that movie just because he needs that. He needs that other character. I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but he sees dead people. Director of the Year. This one's a really tough one. Sam Mendes, we already talked about him. American Beauty. Spike Jonze being John Malkovich. M. Night Shyamalan. He had The Sixth Sense. I think this is funny. In my research, I found out that M. Night Shyamalan for this year also has a writer's credit for She's All That and Stuart Little. So Mr. Shyamalan was really busy that year. I know. It's crazy. I wonder what scenes he wrote for Stuart Little.
Did he just write 2 lines and then he got a credit for it? He was like, they happened to be hanging out, and the sets were across from each other, and he's just like, hey, you should write this.
Do you have a pick for director? Sorry, I had one other person here for director. You can go with either one of these people. They're all great. I said Sam Mendes already, Spike Jonze, M. Night, and David Fincher, Fight Club.
I had Fincher for Fight Club because Fight Club to me was one of those breakout. It wasn't his first, but it was a breakout film that tried to do a lot of things that, like breaking the fourth wall was a big piece of that movie. The way that Fincher chooses to use or not use CGI, where it kind of just blends with the film, where other movies are trying to use CGI way too much and it's obvious. He chooses to stay back and use it tastefully, and his camera motion, what he chooses to do, and just the nihilistic view that he brings to movies like this.
One of the other things in that movie is really establishes himself as not just a director, but just a director who's willing to take chances. Because if you read the book Fight Club, very different than the movie. And
it was, I mean, it was protested.
yeah, and the author of the book, he has talked about numerous times that he does not like the movie because it's so much different than what he wrote. But Fincher's like, bro, this works. You know, this is the vision I have. I know,
it's a different medium.
That's
a lot of people do that. They have that thing where it's like, oh, the book's better than the movie, and I think they're two different mediums. You have to look at them separately. I don't conform to that belief that the book will always be better than the movie. I think that they are two different things.
Yeah, and particularly with this, I wouldn't say one's better than the other. I mean, they're both really, really entertaining. I actually kind of think they're two totally. I mean, it's the same story, but it's really two totally different things. Honorable mentions for director. I mean, this was just such a stacked year for directors. Michael Mann had The Insider. Paul Thomas Anderson had Magnolia, which was the movie that really put him on the map. He had one movie before then, wasn't super successful though. And the Wachowski sisters with The Matrix. I mean, that's just Sam Mendes, Spike Jonze, M. Night Shyamalan, David Fincher, Michael Mann, Paul Thomas Anderson, and the Wachowski sisters. I mean, that's just who's who right there. It's crazy. And it just all establishing themselves in 1999, and they're still big-time players here.
That's what I was saying. That's why I was excited to do this year, the 99, because it's just, there's so many movies that I remember just being amazing movies. And being not only amazing movies, but movies that have stood the test of time and have been influential going on in the future.
Yeah, it's one of those fun things about this podcast is you know, we're so far removed from that time period where you would
it's not like a year review where it's like we're doing 2019's movies in 2020.
Yeah,
we've had some distance and some time and some context around what happened with those movies and cultural context.
Yeah, and you forget what came out, you know? All right, so we're getting into personal stuff, personal favorites. Personal favorite movie of the year for me. I'm looking at my list. I had a couple movies here written, crossed them all out. I had to go with the one that I've seen the most, the one that has had the biggest impact on me. This may be a surprise for people, but my personal favorite movie of 1999, Big Daddy.
That's a bold choice, Cotton. See if it works out for you.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's just, I know it's not going to be a popular choice, but I'm 24 years old, and
it also depends, and you're about to say this, with your age, it depends on when you see a movie. Because when you see something like being as influential as you are at 4, like seeing Brave Little Toaster, in your mind, Brave Little Toaster would be one of the greatest movies that you've ever seen. Like, I remember seeing The Land Before Time. That's still like one of those movies that just like, honestly, rewatching it, I'm kind of disappointed, but like the nostalgia in my mind tells me that movie is an amazing movie. So it just depends. It depends on your age.
Yeah, and I mean, I loved it when I was younger, and then as I got older, and you start to see the story for what it is, and just, I mean, it's a heartwarming story. Yeah,
it takes on a completely different meaning.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I really love it. Big Daddy, my favorite movie of 1999.
I had to go with The Matrix.
Yeah,
and just because of the action, and that movie is one of those movies that really got me into seeing like action-y movies, and I definitely saw the other ones in theaters, but I didn't get to see the first one in theaters.
Yeah, I figured you'd say either The Matrix or Fight Club. I figured you'd go with those. Just knowing you, I just figured those would be right up your alley. Two tremendous movies. Comedy of the year, obviously my personal favorite's Big Daddy, so I got to go with Big Daddy here for comedy as well. I mean, he wipes his own ass.
It's a very quotable movie, but most Adam Sandler films are. I went with Office Space, and that kind of came later, but Mike Judge, having done Beavis and Butthead, I watched Beavis and Butthead religiously with my brother, and him going on to direct this quirky office weird comedy. I don't know. Something about that movie just works for me. And
yeah,
I don't know. I love it.
That's another just so quotable. I mean, if you've worked in an office or know somebody who's worked in an office, they've dropped that'd be great. You know, like that'd be
the getting the name wrong, the Samir Na'i Nanajad.
Yeah,
he's like Samir Na'i Nanajad. It's not that hard.
Damn, Michael Bolton. Honorable mentions here for comedy. Such a stacked year for comedy. American Pie, we already talked about that one. Office Space, you just talked about that. Man on the Moon. I mean, is that a comedy? Is it a drama? What is it? It's a biopic, really.
It's Andy Kaufman, which Andy Kaufman can't be defined, so you can't define that movie.
So this is really one of my favorite comedies. It was tough. If Big Daddy didn't come out this year, this is the one I probably would have went through, is Dogma. I really love that movie.
Oh, Dogma. That's another one that got protested, too.
Yeah. And it's one of the more underrated Kevin Smith movies. I mean, it's an awesome movie.
Chris Rock.
It's still one of my favorite scenes. He says when he's coming down, Chris Rock comes down, and Jay wants to know. He's like, "How do I really know you're an angel?" He says, "Well, you masturbate more than anyone else on the planet." Well, everyone knows that. Well, when you do it, you're thinking about guys. It's just so funny, so silly. This is a decisive one, or a lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about this. I know in my family, we love this movie. We watch it all the time. Galaxy Quest.
Oh, I love Galaxy. There's a documentary that's out now about the making of. I haven't watched it yet, but that is the encapsulation of sci-fi fandom. And having gone to a bunch of conventions, not sci-fi conventions, I go to like horror conventions with my wife because she loves horror movies, but going to conventions and that feel of being in the room with a celebrity and then being able to converse with them, and then like the ideology almost of it, and the look on some of the celebrities' faces where they're like, just like how they are in the movie. Like,
yeah, no, and it's a fun movie. Stacked cast: Tim Allen, Justin Long's in it, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Tony Shalhoub, but just stacked cast.
So Tim Allen was busy that year too. Because he had
Toy Story
2 and this.
Yeah.
So he's coming off of Home Improvement, Toy Story 2, this.
And this is 1999. Chance the first Santa Claus movie came out already, or is it about to come out?
Yeah. And he also had that, I think Jungle to Jungle was in there somewhere.
Jungle to Jungle. Tim Allen, I will say this for the rest of my life. There's no one in the world who could have played Buzz Lightyear better than Tim Allen, because if Toy Story was real, he would be the one to think. Like, Tim Allen would be the one to be like, "No, this is all real. This is all real.
This is the real thing."
Another one in my honorable mentions for comedy is Austin Powers, Spy Who Shagged Me. I already talked about that. And then the South Park movie.
Jesus. Yeah, so the South Park movie coming out when it came out and then going to the drive-in. I think there was a third movie that was... Oh, Bowfinger was the other movie that was in that lineup. So it was like a really odd lineup of movies to see that evening, because you had Runaway Bride, Bowfinger, South Park.
Yeah, Bowfinger is it's an odd couple kind of movie. It's funny. I thought about it.
There's
it's a good
moments.
Movie.
There's moments. It's Steve Martin.
But
South
and
Park,
Eddie Murphy. I mean, look, you're gonna go right with that.
It got into maybe. My dad had never seen South Park, didn't know really what it was. And it was a cartoon, so of course he's like, "Oh, we can stay." And then it got 10 minutes into it, and he's like, "Yeah, we got to go. Back it up."
My only thought on the movie is it's funny, and I wish I'd do another one. All right, that's a comedy. Let's move on to action/thriller of the year. I got to go with The Matrix. I think it's a pretty obvious choice. I mean, there's some other ones that are pretty good.
Yeah, I would say The Matrix takes it. Hands down.
I mean, I watched it actually just the other day, and I mean that scene where they first go into the building, it's where they have the shootout on the bottom where they're going to go save Morpheus.
Yes.
Just so cool.
Absolutely
so cool.
My favorite thing. Just so that he goes through the metal detector and then just all hell breaks loose.
And it's funny. That's one of those scenes where you turn it on, or that scene comes on, and you're like, "Oh yeah, this part's coming up. That's super cool." And then that part flies by, and then they're on top of the building, and then you remember that's when he does the slow-mo thing.
Yes.
It's like, oh man, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And then
it's
that
just
whole
moment
movie.
after moment after that point in the movie.
Oh, it's awesome. Honorable mentions for that: Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, Boondock Saints came out that year, and The Mummy. I'll put that in there. I like that movie. Boondock Saints is the one that stands out the most. Great
Boondock
movie.
Saints was gritty. It was good.
That is every wannabe gangster who lives in the Massachusetts area, their favorite movie is Boondock Saints. Drama. Oh, so you action thriller of the year? Do you have one?
That was
The Matrix.
Matrix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, easy choice on that one. Drama of the year: American Beauty, Fight Club, or Magnolia. I couldn't pick one. It really depends on the mood that you're in that day.
I had to pick American Beauty. It's the one that I've probably rewatched the most out of all of them, and I haven't seen Magnolia, so I can't judge that one. But
check it out. Magnolia is one of those The first time I saw it, I liked it. There's some memorable scenes, but it's a rewatch because I think Paul Thomas Anderson does a good job of juggling it, but I think it's really tough to tell a movie that is one story from multiple perspectives. You know, it gets kind of convoluted. It can be jumpy a little
you have
bit.
To pay attention.
Exactly. But it's a good movie, and it just there's some moments in there. I mean, Tom Cruise has this one scene. It's just it's Tom Cruise. So you went with American Beauty. You know, I couldn't pick one. Some of my honorable mentions for this year: Green Mile. We already talked about that. The Talented Mr. Ripley that's a really good movie, and it kind of flew under the radar. It's in years past, and years since then, it's kind of been
It's been talked
respected.
about. Yeah, it's been talked about in movie circles, definitely.
Eyes Wide Shut is another one. The Sixth Sense, The Insider. We already talked about that. Here's maybe I can put this in my guilty pleasures here, but I have Any Given Sunday here in my honorable mentions. I love that movie.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some great scenes. Great dialogue. Tense.
Yeah, I mean, look, the monologue at the end with Al Pacino, it's worth it watching that, and I will take this to my grave. I truly believe that he took that role just because he got 5 minutes at the end. He was like, what? 5 minutes? Just me? I'll take it.
You let me talk for that long?
Animated movie of the year, stacked year for animated movies. I thought it was a clear number one choice, though, The Iron Giant.
Yes. Retrospective being what it is, I would say The Iron Giant.
Welcome to Coolsville. Honorable mentions, Toy Story 2 and Tarzan. We already talked about that. Here's a one I like. This is a direct-to-DVD movie, Batman Beyond the Movie. This is right off the heels of the Batman animated series.
Yeah.
So it was Batman was
the
hot.
90s were Batman. It was definitely a good time.
Yeah, Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue and South Park the Movie also came out that year. Those are my honorable mentions. You already said Iron Giant.
Yep.
Number one. All right, into guilty pleasures. This is the fun part. Guilty pleasures, good year for guilty pleasures in 1999. One of the things I love is bad animal horror movies, and Deep Blue Sea and Lake Placid came out in 1999. Oh,
My mom's one of her all-time favorite movies is Deep Blue Sea.
I can't blame her. I love that
There's
movie.
something entertaining about it. I guess it's like partially because of the concept of being underwater and you have no escape.
Yeah.
You're just stuck there.
And it's a good cast of characters too. Thomas Jane is the lead. He's good. He's a straight lace, kind of not plays the same character every time, but he's a good straight guy. Michael Rappaport trying to be a nice guy. LL Cool J as the chef. I mean, it's awesome. And then of
he
course
was funny in that. LL Cool J was hilarious.
Him and that parrot, they were great.
Him with the recipe for the omelet or whatever. And he's like recording it because he's like, don't use milk. That is a rookie mistake. Like he's just like going through.
It's a good one. And then of course, how could you how we not forget Samuel L. Jackson? Final lightsaber battle in episode 1 is guilty pleasure for me. That's my favorite part in that movie. I
mean, Darth Maul was one of the best characters in Star Wars, and he didn't like speak.
I know, but he became such a cult classic hero. Like people loved him so much that they brought him back in the cartoons because they were like, here, we're gonna expand this character that we love.
They've also done that in several of the graphic novels, and they've done backstory stuff for him, like comic book wise. So he's definitely a beloved character.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that final lightsaber battle. Him, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan. I mean, the soundtrack, or excuse me, the song that they use for there, I mean, it's just the best. Another guilty pleasure for me, Bicentennial Man. That's the Robin Williams robot movie.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved Robin Williams as a kid, so I'd watch him in anything. Couple more guilty pleasures. Deuce Bigelow, the first one. I love that movie.
I forgot that came out that year. The hot tub scene where he's got the sub and the tomatoes floating, and he grabs it up and eats it.
And then white boy, so funny. And then the baseball scene, I love it.
Yeah.
Another guilty pleasure for me, Detroit Rock City. This is not a good movie, but I saw it at the time. I saw it at the right age. Oh yeah, it's not really that great. There's just one scene that I love so much is their friend is in this like Catholic school and they're trying to break him out, and they feed magic mushrooms to one of the priests, and he trips out. My last guilty pleasure from 1999 is the Molly Shannon movie Superstar.
SNL. We were talking about how SNL just had these string of movies, but yeah, that was another one that was funny, but I feel like it's a one watcher.
Oh yeah, no, it's not a lot of rewatch value on that. I think, I'll just come out and say it. I think part of the reason I love that movie so much is I've had a crush on Molly Shannon since I was like 9 years old. And it's like, I think love...
it's a personality thing.
And it's a funny thing. I love funny people, so she's funny. Of course I'm going to be attracted to her. Guilty pleasures for you? Would you like to share any?
Oh, I had the Mummy because I feel like it's kind of, over the years, been kind of made into a bit of a joke. And so has Brendan Fraser's career.
I used to always joke never mind, it's inappropriate. Brendan Fraser did bad things to be in that Looney Tunes movie. I know he did. He did things he's not proud of to be in that movie.
Never Been Kissed. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Is that no? I've never seen. Does that hold a special place in your heart because you and your girlfriend watched, or you and your wife watched that when you were younger?
No, I don't know. There's something about that. I don't know. There's something about the movie. It's a romantic comedy, but there are definitely some funny moments in it. Idle Hands, which is a horror movie where Devon Sawa's hand becomes possessed by some like devil entity,
and he cuts it off, right?
He thought that the best way to handle it was cutting it off because he's like, I'm free, and then it wreaks havoc on the town.
Oh god, oh god.
And Wild Wild West, because I can't not watch it if it's on TV, but it's a train wreck.
It's one of those fun movies, though. There is some scenes in there that are fun, and Will Smith's so entertaining.
Will Smith is Will Smith.
Yeah. All right, movies you haven't seen yet from this year that you want to? Do you have any? You want to start this one?
I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, which is a surprising thing to me because I've seen pretty much every Kubrick film except this one.
I love the conspiracy theory section on Reddit.
I mean, that's followed Kubrick his entire career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many conspiracy theories around that guy.
The moon landing.
I don't want to get into that one. I want to keep our listeners as many as we can, so no one wants to hear my opinion on that. Movies I haven't seen from this year that I want to. Extends is this Jude Law movie. It's kind of weird video game movie that looks interesting. Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie. Jim Jarmusch, one of those legendary indie filmmakers, and this is one of his more renowned movies people talk about as being awesome. 8mm. I only want to see this because I saw it on IMDb, and it had James Gandolfini and Joaquin Phoenix in it. I was like, oh, they're both in it? I would see that. It's
dark, gritty. It has to do with like a murder mystery, but there's a snuff film or something that they stumble upon. There's something to do with rich people, and they had this snuff film, and what's his name? Who's the lead in that? That's
I'm not sure who the lead is. All I know is Joaquin Phoenix.
He's crazy now, and he is in terrible movies all the time.
Man. The first person that came to my mind when you said that was damn, what's his name?
He was in Face Off.
Nicolas Cage?
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So he gets this
Gary
snuff...
Busey was what came to my mind when you said that. Like, Gary Busey's in this movie?
That would be a phenomenally different movie if Busey was the lead in this. No, Nicolas Cage, he is kind, I don't know, he's like a detective-ish kind of guy trying to solve this murder mystery, and he brings on Joaquin Phoenix because Joaquin Phoenix knows something, or he knows people in the area, but he's like a wasted out druggie or whatever. And so he's trying to get him sober and keep him sober so that he can do the investigation and figure this whole thing out.
Joaquin Phoenix probably nailed that role. Ed TV, another movie I haven't seen yet that I'd like to see from this year. That was one of Matthew McConaughey's first roles as a leading man, and it's kind of been going on. It's gone on to garner a lot of fame because people say it was ahead of its time.
What an arc he's had as far as a career.
Oh my God, incredible! We'll have to one day. We were talking about because there's a shelf life with this show because just so many
Eventually
episodes.
It's gonna end.
Yeah, there's only so many episodes that we could do. We were trying to talk about other ways that we could reinvent it later on. on, and that would be an interesting one. Is where we just pick an actor and talk about their arc as a career, because Matthew McConaughey has had one of those incredible careers. It's just very strange. And now I'll just take this time to send a message out to Matthew McConaughey from one of your biggest fans. Please stop doing those fucking Lincoln commercials. They're so dumb. Thank you. I'll step off my soapbox now.
But you could buy a Lincoln.
What's the one that's out now where he's trying to convince you that Matthew McConaughey goes ice fishing? Okay, that doesn't happen. Well, no, my last movie that I haven't seen from this year that I want to see is The Astronaut's Wife. I saw this on IMDb. Looked like it had an interesting plot.
No.
And
no, it was one of those movies that has a good premise, but does not deliver in the least, and then leaves you wanting, and not in a good way.
Maybe that could be one of the movies. I had this idea that a great idea, or I think a great idea for a studio would be buy the distribution rights for classic terrible movies,
like,
and then remake them.
I've thought about this before, where you take a movie that has a great concept but executed terribly, or maybe it was bad timing for that particular movie to come out, because sometimes a movie comes out and it's like years later it's something that's kind of looked at like, oh, that could have been a really good thing. That would be awesome to take some of these movies that are like barely hit the mark and you're like, yeah,
just get another crack at it. I know. I think that'd be a great idea. Like, somebody can do The Happening again, because like when you just like look at
Concept.
The Happening, it's a great concept.
On paper, yes.
We just don't need Mark Wahlberg talking to plants. Trends from the year of 1999. Man, this is a tough one, because I think there's a lot of trends from this year. I mean, you could just go to The Matrix in general, because that just spawned thousands of movies, hundreds of movies that ripped off of it. But my trend from the year is, I just thought it was the year of the breakout directors. Sam Mendes, Paul Thomas Anderson, Spike Jonze, Wachowski sisters, M. Night, David Fincher. They all established themselves, and they're all big-time players in the industry almost 20 years later.
A lot of movers and shakers that made big movies this year, and I think that was what was most exciting about 99. But there was, to me, maybe there's whiplash of what comes out now, especially with streaming services and stuff. It felt like there was a lack of animated movies that year, and I think as we go back in time further, we may see that.
Oh,
there's less and less, because it's
Absolutely.
more difficult to make
and
now
more
it's
expensive.
Like, now it's like something that you get 35 like cartoon something, animated something
now,
throughout a year.
Animated movies, I've thought this now for the last couple years, and you can see it. It's the trend of Hollywood, or they know it. You can have a couple of actors or actresses in the movie that will get people's attention, and you need a couple of scenes that adults will like as well, and it's a license to print money. I mean, animated movies always do well at the box office because people want to take their kids.
You're not just selling one ticket, you're selling 3, 4, 5 because families are going.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's huge cash grab.
And these two genres don't typically do extremely well in the box office, but some do. But comedy and horror, there was an abundance of like these horror B movies that came out that year, and I think that since the 80s, that's kind of been the trend, where you've got just this plethora of big horror movies that come out in general. But like even some of this, like Sixth Sense, you could technically say is horror film.
Oh, I bet if you went on IMDb, it's probably listed as drama,
like thriller,
horror,
drama, thriller, horror. But I mean, it skirts the line. So I think that was a big year for comedy stuff and for horror stuff.
Yeah, that was actually in my final thoughts here as we were wrapping this up. Huge year in film all around, but I just wish they made more comedies like this. I mean, it's just, this was a huge, huge year for comedy. Austin
and a vast
Powers.
Spectrum of comedies. I mean, like you just said Austin Powers as being something that was like from the mind. It's just a very strange thing. And then to do something that's irreverent and boobs as as American Pie, and then Big Daddy, and it was, and South Park was another huge comedy, but like I don't know, it was just diverse. It was a diverse year. It wasn't just like rom-com or straight comedy.
Nowadays, you usually get one or two of those movies, and it's, you know, you get Good Boys came out this past year, and then like 1999, you had so many of those movies come out, and it was a good year, fun year for comedies. Some of your final thoughts here on the year as we wrap things up?
Just, it's one of the most influential years in movie history to me, especially looking back with the lens of having distance of time. Like you said, great directors putting out great films, great actors putting out great performances, great dialogue, being recognized within the Academy. I just think that there were just a lot of establishing things that happened. Action with The Matrix, comedy with movies like, you know, South Park and Big Daddy, dramas. I mean, you had it all. There was just a lot of films that if you were to talk about films for long, you know, a list of 100 films that you consider great, there would be a lot of films in this year that would end up on it.
Yeah, there's a reason that if you go online, just type in like most influential years in movies, this one is always at least in the top 5, mostly a lot of times even in the top 3. It's just a huge year for movies, and this is a huge episode for us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The year was 1999. Jeff, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
See you.